Right, hello everyone and welcome to Engaging Data Bites. Today we are joined by Jean Lawson and Rob Jones from Yellowfin. We've recently partnered with Yellowfin, and the reason why we've partnered with Yellowfin is we talk to a lot of different companies, lots of different levels of data maturity. For example, since the beginning of the year, we've been talking to many smaller companies who want to start sharing data from their platforms, whether it's a trading platform or some sort of database, and they need a way of doing that that's controlled, doesn't duplicate data, and keeps it nice and safe and sound. But we also speak to other companies that are on one of the bigger platforms, maybe something like Power BI or ClickView, but they're starting to run into some costs and some pain points where as they scale, everything's got a bit more expensive. And some of them even say that they didn't expect that kind of cost to come around. So when we're speaking to companies like these, like the two examples I gave, Yellowfin quickly becomes part of the conversation because of its strengths. The dashboard capability within Yellowfin enables for flexible designs to help with automated or self-discovery reporting. It's also easy to create data stories, which is really important, especially when you're trying to help people understand what's going on within the data. There you have your options to go on-premise or go into the cloud, so your choice of infrastructure works. There's some very powerful enablement packs for embedding reports, which I'm sure Jean and Rob will talk about more. And you can create guided self-services for teams and departments to enable them to use a standard set of reports and be able to reuse the reports time and time again. And finally, the pricing is just right. You'll be able to, when you get into these things, understand what the pricing structure is going to be, and it actually more affordable as you scale up. So with that, I will hand over to Jean.
Well, thank you very much, Simon, and thanks again for the invitation to share with everybody today. So really looking forward to it. And I know it's more of a, not so much a lunch and learn, but an afternoon tea and learn. So I hope you all got your scones and jam and you're all ready for the session today. So I'm the partner manager for Yellowfin, been with Yellowfin for almost 8.5 years. I can't believe it. So for quite a while. So I'm really excited to be working with Simon and the Engaging Data team for so many reasons. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes just to give you a very brief introduction about Yellowfin and who we are, and then I'm going to pass straight over to my colleague Rob, who's going to show you a little bit of Yellowfin in action, and just we're going to pick up any questions that you have. So again, I'm not sure how many of you have come across Yellowfin before, but just a quick background to us. We were initially founded back in 2003. We were an Australian company. We were founded in Melbourne, and it was at the start of last year that we were actually acquired by Idera. So I don't know if many of you know Idera, but it's a huge group of companies, and we're in really good company because we're part of a dev tools part of Idera, and you'll recognise a number of names in there from Embarcadero, Wherescape, and I'll talk about Wherescape in a second. And you can see many of our sister companies on this slide. So we're now part of a really solid, big, growing group where there's a huge amount of collaboration. And I think today our plan is really to talk to you about the value of BI. So it's all about building your analytics on strong foundations, if you like. And we're probably aware with your connection with Engaging Data that some of you, may already have Wherescape as your data platform. And congratulations, you have, because it's a really great choice. And with Yellowfin sitting on top of a great data platform, you have the best of both worlds. Now, I really like this image because it shows that the heavy lifting is often happening under the surface to enable Yellowfin to have the optimal secure performance in a very governed secure environment. So above the surface you can see all of the strengths of Yellowfin, and which Rob is about to talk through and show you around embedding capabilities, automation, self-service, and so much more. And Simon kindly mentioned some of these topics at the beginning, but I think I just wanted to give you a very short introduction and talk about some of the issues that we're helping solve with Yellowfin, as I say, with our action-based dashboards and our security and the storytelling, etc., and some of the business value it can bring. So I know I quite like this slide because I think this is Yellowfin. We've often been marked as a leader in innovation by Gartner. So we're sort of sexy and cool. We've got really modern interface, a lot of incredible stuff you can do to customize Yellowfin and give it a real modern look and feel. And I think this is often a driver for adoption, either internally or with your customers pushing for that kind of more modern interface. These are some of the use cases we have, whether you're on this to learn more about how you can create bolt-on dashboards for your customers or internally. finally, we can design external portals with Yellowfin. You can even build standard data applications. We've got many partners that have built a VAT application with Yellowfin reporting, commerce platform. We've got risk platforms, purchasing platforms, all built with Yellowfin as the reporting. So there's so much you can do. You can integrate Yellowfin, and it's all data driven. So without taking time away from Rob, I'll let him cover those topics in a bit more detail. And these are just a few visuals and some of the key issues and problems we're helping customers solve, whether they're immature in BI and at that early stage where they've only got Excels, tables, spreadsheets, and they've not evolved yet, to working with fully blown advanced analytics platform. That's visualizing your data. That self-service that's driving a lot of our conversations, and the fact we have guided self-service. So you'll hear a bit more about why that's different to standard self-service, if you like. So that gives your users, if you've got end customers wanting to use an analytic platform, a little bit more of autonomy, but as a guided process around that. And it's taking the pressure off the IT teams as well, analysing on the fly, etc. We're seeing a lot of customers just rip and replacing the old legacy systems as well. So complex, slow. So it's all about performance, scalability at an affordable price. And then finally, it's again going back to that modern UX and that sexy cat we saw at the beginning. Greater adoption and a real modern UX. And now with our sister company Fusion Charts as well, it's incredible the look and feel that you can actually give Yellowfin now. So again, I've rattled away just a few words about us, some of the issues we're solving. But now, without further ado, I'm actually going to hand over now to Rob. So thanks everybody. Here's Rob.
So in the next few minutes, I'd like to give you a bit of an idea of what Yellowfin looks like and show you some of its next generation analytics features, some of those self-service features that Jean and Chris were talking about earlier. I'll be walking you through the process of creating a simple dashboard, including all the key steps. To save a bit of time, the first part will be slides, but we'll create the reports and dashboards for live. We're all amongst friends. It all starts with the data. So, and you can point Yellowfin at your application databases or even your application with a bit more work. It's usually better to have a data warehouse. And why is that? It's the more you can do in the database, the better. It tends to be the way that you can maximize the reuse. You can then optimize it for analytics, both the structure, the resources available to the database if you've got a dedicated BI database, and the resulting performance from that generally lead to a better experience for your end users. And if you're already using Warescape, as I know some of you are, then you're in great shape. But it doesn't have to be Warescape. Whatever you're using for that platform, the point really is to organize your data, and the more organization you can do before you start trying to do visualization on top of it, generally speaking, the better the results are likely to be. But of course, there are times when you're going to need to report on live data with little or no latency, and that's when you are going to want to point Yellowfin directly at your application databases or the applications themselves that I mentioned. Don't worry, we've got your back there as well. Let's see how to use Yellowfin with a data mart. First of all, as you'd expect, you need to define a connection to the data source, and Yellowfin supports a wide range of data sources. Pretty much anything you can get a JDBC driver for, you can connect. We have database specific connectors for all of the major platforms, but anything that's not listed there, you can connect to through a generic JDBC data source as well. If the one that you want when you're creating a new view doesn't already exist, you go through this option down here and create a new source. When you're doing that, to say you can have a database. We also support various OLAP cubes. In some circumstances, it can make sense to talk directly to a CSV data source. Typically, I tend to think of that as being more of a prototyping environment, but it certainly can be useful at that stage. And there are also various other things you can connect to. You can connect into SSRS reporting, and they're not listed here, but there's a bunch of other connectors directly to applications, things like Microsoft Dynamics and so on, which you can obtain. Generally speaking, you'd need to purchase the connector for that through one of our partners. Having identified your data source and created the connection, you're then going to say, right, the usual database parameters to say, how am I going to connect to it? It's all the stuff about database, port numbers, users, all that kind of stuff, as you'd expect. And then once that's done, you're ready to go and create the actual view. Now in Yellowfin, that's the semantic layer, and it's really quite rich, and it's an important step to cover, because the more you do in the view, the easier you're going to make it for people who want to then build reports and other visualizations on top of your data. The first thing you need to decide is, well, when I'm going to build a view, am I going to want to build it on a single table, multiple tables, or am I actually going to want to write freehand SQL to get at the data? Whichever way you do it, the goal ultimately is to present your data as a single data set, a logical data set. Obviously, if it's a single table, it's already physicalized as that in the database. But from Yellowfin's point of view, you want to present it as though it is one. If you're using multiple tables, that doesn't mean that all the tables always get joined together. Yellowfin is intelligent and it will decide which tables it actually needs to join depending on what you include in your report. Having identified the kind of view you want to build, in this case, we're going for a data mart, a simple star schema. So we're going to have to select the tables and we get a canvas that we can drag them onto. That's what we get in the next step here, where you then go ahead and you specify the joins between the tables. So it's a simple star schema. So in this case, they're simple one-to-many relationships from the dimension tables into the fact table. And then having done that, we go ahead and select the columns we want from each of the tables in turn. Once all that's done, we've got ourselves to that single logical data set that I talked about. And there's a number of things that we can do in addition to make that data easier to consume in your reports. So if we need to, we can rename columns. We're using a data mart. We don't need to do very much of that because our data mart designers gave them all friendly names in the first place. They thought so anyway. If we disagree, we can change them. We can specify default display formats. So whether that's currency, numeric, number of decimal places, date formatting, time formatting if we need to. We can create calculated fields at this point. And again, back to the point about reuse, if we're going to want to have calculated fields, the database is ideal if we can do it in the database view. Next best place is in the Yellowfin view. You can do it in the report as well, but if you do it in a report, then obviously it doesn't get reused. It's only within that single report. So it's better to do as much of that as possible in the view. We need to categorize the fields as dimensions or metrics. In Yellowfin, the metrics are shown with the blue circle, the dimensions are shown with a yellow square, and that just gives Yellowfin a hint as to how you want to use those fields. And you can organize them then into folders. So in this case, I've gone for a fairly traditional approach of the metrics are all in one folder. I've got a time folder, stores, details about stores, and details about products in another folder. It's a simple data mart structure, so that works quite well. But you have complete freedom as to how you want to organize your folders, with the goal of making it easy for your report builders to find the fields that they need. And if you need to, you can go ahead and configure drill hierarchies. So there's not very much in this. In this one, we've just got one hierarchy, product category, subcategory, and product name. Having done all of that, the data is now in good shape. I've renamed any columns that I needed to, so they're business friendly. I've set up all my hierarchies. The next thing is really talking about some of that Yellowfin next generation analytics that I wanted to mention before we move on. So we talked about guided analytics or guided self-service, but the actual feature here is guided natural language query. That's one feature, and another one is assisted insights. Those are the two main augmented analytics features that we're talking about. So guided natural language query first is our approach to self-service report building, reports and charts. And the goal here is to make it as easy as possible for a business user to construct a valid query. So we take the approach that says, rather than as some tools do, just letting them type in whatever they think of the query and then trying to interpret their English or their natural language. Instead, we take the view that we're going to try to guide them down a path that leads them to a query which is expressed in something that is fairly easy to understand. That's the natural language. So they don't write it up front. We help them to write a valid query, and we'll see a bit of that later. So if we want to enable that, that's done on a view, and we have to tick the box here to say, yes, I want this view to be used that way, because sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you'll build a view for a particular purpose and you don't intend to make self-service available, so you don't need to enable that for either assisted insights or guided NLQ. But when we do, it's about choosing the fields that we want them to have access to. When we built the view, we chose all the fields that were going to be necessary for building reports, and that was for anybody, whether that's for self-service or for more traditional BI teams to build the reports and then share them with other users. You don't always want all of those fields made available to business users to build their own reports. An example of that might be if you've got geometry data for mapping. It's like you can't really build a sensible SQL query yourself using that kind of data. You need it to be able to represent things on graphs and so on, but that's not within the scope of natural language query. So you wouldn't include that in the list of fields that you're making available. Generally speaking, the idea is you want to put as few as possible while enabling them to answer the questions that you think they're going to want to ask. And you can go back and change that later. So it's not a one-time only deal. You can come back and review that list at a later stage. Move into the live demo. So I'll log into Yellowfin. This is the standard login screen, which you could customize for yourself. It doesn't have to look like this. This is the out of the box look and feel. This bit is slightly customized in as much as you don't normally see a dashboard like this. Technically, it's a dashboard. In practice, it's just a logo screen because I didn't want to distract you with the ready-made dashboards. You can configure it to have a different dashboard landing page for each user if you want. You can do it so that when you create a user in a particular group, they get a default dashboard. A fair amount of control you can exercise over that. Typically, you might then want to give them flexibility to add additional dashboards and to choose which one they see first. But that's kind of up to you when you get into the deployment stage. So without further ado, we'll press on and create that report we talked about. So up here on the right, we've got the plus button. It's where you add content, hence the plus. There's a number of things we can add, the different content. So the view that we created earlier, if we didn't really have it, we'd be creating it. Before that, you can create a new data source, which would be the connection to the database. Before even that, if you wanted to, there's also transformation flows where you can do some limited ETL in terms of little bits of manipulation. Yellowfin isn't an ETL tool. Within our product family, we've got Warescape primarily for doing that. But if you want to do a little bit of minor manipulation, or again back to POCs, and you need to pull CSV data files into your database to work with, that's the kind of thing that you can do using transformation flows. So we'll go in and look at report to start with. So creating a new report, the first thing I need to say is, well, what data do I want to report on? And that's what view do I want to use? So here we've got the sales mart that we created, a view that we created earlier. Select that. And we're into a fairly traditional canvas for building a report. In this case, I know the report I'm trying to build, so I'm going to drag in the metrics is going to be sales value, drag it onto the canvas, and we're going to add in product category. If I drag season in now as another one. I've done that, so now I'm going to look at creating the chart, and I've got, I want two charts. So I'm going to have sales. First we'll analyze it by product category. Okay, so now I've got, and that's I'm happy with that visualization, so I'll go with that. Add another chart by clicking on the button down on the right there. Another visualization. In this case, we'll have sum of sales value, and we'll look at it by season this time. And I think that would look better as a pie chart. So up here, I can choose. There's auto chart, where Yellowfin chooses what kind of chart will best represent the data. But if you don't agree with it, you can select the chart type, and there's a whole raft of different chart types that can be used. All of the standard ones: bar charts, area charts, column charts. You can have combination charts where you overlay more than one chart type on the canvas at the same time. We've got mapping charts, various sort of gauges which can look good in dashboards and so on, and some of these special purpose charts which are a bit more technical for special purposes, like funnel charts and radar diagrams. But we'll just add a simple pie chart. I'm kind of happy with that now. There is another step which we could use if we wanted to organize this. We're going to use the report itself and work primarily with the report rather than the dashboard. I could go ahead and do a nice layout and put titles and graphics into the report. But actually, I know I'm going to embed it in a dashboard, so I'm just going to keep it simple and publish it at that point. So I'll give it a name. I'm going to call this sales analysis, and choose where I'm going to store it. So content folders is another Yellowfin construct. So you organize your Yellowfin content into folders and subfolders. In this case, I'll put it into demonstrations and engaging data as today's folder. So save that away. So at this point, it's going to show me the published report. It'll take me there so I can view it. Now, those charts, as I said, I chose not to design the report in detail, so I haven't told it to put those onto the canvas. So it's just showing me the tabular data that I put in there. And that's fine for the moment, because what I'm going to do next is go in and create a dashboard. So I'm going to open that up. We'll give it a name. The same actually, sales analysis, or just fun. So when I create a dashboard, I can choose the layout. Typically what we find is most people will actually go for the freeform canvas, but if you want a more traditional templated layout, you can go for one of these ready-made templates. I'll just go ahead with the canvas one for now. So here I am, I've got my free format canvas, and within this space, I can pretty much organize things as I want. So we'll start by giving the dashboard a title. Funnily enough, we're going to call it sales analysis. I might want to jazz that up a bit with some corporate image. So actually the data that I'm working with is one of our sample data sets. So I'll drag that image in there and we'll just take that in the corner. This could be your corporate logo or department logo or whatever you like, really. And then finally, we're going to add the reports. In a busy system, you might have quite a lot of reports. So we have an advanced search feature which you can use to help you find the content you look for. So I know that I've saved it in demonstrations, engaging data, search for that, and there's my sales analysis report. So I'm going to drag that on, and it says, but actually that report has various kinds of content that you might want to present. What did you want to put in? So in this case, I'll choose the chart that I wanted, position that where I want it on the screen. And then actually I'm going to drag that one on again, and I'll put the other charts in this one as well. And if I wanted to, I could add the tabular data, but I don't really want it on my dashboard. So just line that up nicely. Not heavily formatted, but you get the idea. You can add things and you can format it, and so on. Can change fonts and sizes and all those kinds of things. If I want to change the way the charts are formatted, then I need to go back to the report in order to format those. But I can open them up just by clicking on the button here to get back to it easily. So I'm done with that. I have a preview option, so I'm going to go for that and have a look, see what my dashboard looks like. So I've got this here. I'd like to show you the assisted insights feature. So we ticked the box when we created the view to say I wanted the assisted insights features, and down here we've got this auto analyze capability. So I can choose to explain the data or compare the data in a particular segment of the chart. So we'll start by explaining the data. What that's going to do is go away and look at the sales value metric and provide me with some insight into what drives that. The way that it does that is based on the way the view is constructed. So as I said, we categorize fields into dimensions and metrics, and what this is going is right for the metric that's displayed in this chart is going away and trying to understand which of the dimensions actually drives that value. Here we've got the output, and if we look at this, it's looked at broken it down by product subcategory, which we didn't include in our report. You remember, we just looked at category, but it knows about the hierarchy that we defined. So it's looking at product subcategory, and showing you how the contribution by categories is ranked, and so on. We've got narrative text, which is telling you it's telling you the subcategory is the thing that affects the sales value most, so more than category, which I suppose kind of makes some sense. It tells you like the minimum value, the maximum value, the average value, the usual sort of stuff that you would do if you were profiling the data. Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware that there was actually I was going to build it, but as an end user, might not be aware that there's actually chains and independent stores. So actually, I'm thinking I might want to add that to my chart. So we'll go and create that in a minute. And you can see a range of different different charts that it's created on those things. Click that one. So the other analysis was comparing values. And in that case, if we hover over there for a minute, we get compare. And there you say, right, so the value that you're hovering over, which is vodkas in this case, what do I want to compare that with? I choose another one, say rums, and it'll go away and run a similar analysis. Now, given that it does seem to be running a bit slowly at the moment, I think I might skip that. What you would get is an analysis that kind of looks superficially quite similar, but what it's doing is it's breaking down the drivers of the difference between those two values. So again, it's ranking the dimensions and combinations of dimensions that do that. But it's a similar format. It comes out in a right sidebar. We might come back to it and have a look if we get time at the end. What I'm actually going to do, though, is create that report that we talked about. So using the plus button again, I'm going to ask a question. And here we're using the guided natural language query that I talked about. So in that case, the first thing we have to do is say, once again, well, what data do I want to work with? I've got quite a lot of data sets here. Typically, you might have fewer than that, or if you did have lots, then you'd want to be careful to give them a name that guides your users to the right one. So sales data view, start. And as I said, what we're doing here is we're helping our user to construct the question that they want. So we've got various styles of query that we've identified as being commonly asked questions. In this case, we're going to want to show a particular metric, but I could also do things like listing values of a dimension, looking at the top end values in a dimension with respect to some metric. I can create crosstabs and variants and so on. But this one, we'll keep it simple. We'll just go for show. The metric is going to be sales value again, by and some seasons. This time I want to look at it by store type. And to keep it consistent, we'll say for all time. That's what we did, but we didn't specify any filters when we built the report, so we'll keep it that way for that. So ask the question. So again, it's going away running the query, which is, so it's constructed SQL based on that query. It's run it and it's decided by looking at the results what's the best way to present it. I think, yep, that's a reasonable way to present it. Bar chart with two entries. So what I want to do with that. Well, there's a few things I could do. If I wanted to refine the question further, I could go back and edit it, tweak the question. And I can edit bits or change it completely. I have to ask it again now because I didn't save it. Or alternatively, I could ask a completely new question, or I can go ahead and add it to something. So the options for adding it, like in this case, we want to add it to a dashboard. I could also add it to stories or presentations, which are other features of Yellowfin which we might get to. But we mentioned, I think, the storytelling capabilities. Well, a story is one of those key features. It's like a data-centric blog. We might have a look at that in a minute. But for now, we'll add this one to a dashboard. First thing is to say, well, what's it called? What is the name of this report? So it is sales by store type, and we'll store it in the same folders, keep things simple. And what it's going to do then is to say, right, you've stored that away. I know you want to add it to a dashboard. You're going to have to tell me exactly where you want to put it in the dashboard. So I was going to open up the, first of all, it said, well, which dashboard do you want to add it to? The sales analysis dashboard. And now it says, right, this is ready for you to put it in. So where do you want to put it? So I drag it on. Okay, happy with that. That looks fine, job done. So we'll, again, we can just preview that, make sure we're happy with it. Pretty simple. If it were real, I'd probably want to write individual titles for these chart elements as well, which I can do all of that either in the dashboard editor or in the charts. But we won't delve into that just now. So I can say that's happy, that's good to go. So I just go ahead and publish the dashboard. Once again, where do I want to put it? Demonstrations, engaging data. So now I've got this one, for example, I might choose to move it and just change it so that that's my first dashboard like that. Having done that, not much will happen on here, but if I were to log out and log back in again, then it now becomes my first dashboard. That's the one I see by default.
I have questions around the embedding. I don't know if that's something we can talk about in this session, or if there's another more interesting part we can go through.
It's probably not a bad shout. We can have a look at that. For that, we will jump over to our demos, another demo site.
Have you got any specific questions on the embedding piece, Simon? Because I know that's one of the Yellowfin strengths. Over 60% of our customers will be OEM, will have embedded Yellowfin, often multi-tenant, which is another strength of ours.
I'm just keen to sort of demo and sort of see how you could use it and what most of your customers do use it for. That'd be really ideal.
So let's talk through that a little bit then. So what we've built here is just a demonstration of how you can embed Yellowfin within an in this case it's a Spring Boot application, so Java application, and it demonstrates a number of different styles of embedding. So I mean the main ways that you can or the main aspects to embedding or integrating Yellowfin are you can white label the product completely. I mean there's virtually nothing in the UI, virtually nothing in terms of the styling of the UI that can't be changed if you want to. The simplest is just to change the logos at the top and add your own logo. The very simplest is literally just to add your own logo alongside Yellowfin. Slightly more complicated but still very straightforward is to replace the Yellowfin logos with your own. Beyond that, you can go on, you can change the style, use CSS style sheets to change the look and feel of just about any element within the product, should you wish to do so. Obviously you can be selective about that, you don't have to change everything. And then you can go ahead and you can look at surfacing elements of Yellowfin within your application. And this demo attempts to do or does do several of those. So if we start off by logging into it. So here we're logging into the application. So you see app login here. It's not logging into Yellowfin at this point. It's logging into the application. So this is a Spring Boot Java application we're looking at. And the way that this works, typically, is that the header section up here is actually common to both Yellowfin and this application. So we've embedded the header within the application, and we embed the same header. You can tell Yellowfin what you want to use as your header, and we do that. So at this point, this is our application. If I click on these links, I get so my dashboards or my reports. I go straight through into Yellowfin. As we can see, if we do that, the URL changes, but the look and feel of the application, it doesn't have to. I mean, you can configure it to look much the same. It's just being we haven't changed the URL at the moment. So this here, we're now looking at Yellowfin. But it's been styled, both in terms of the application, the default colors, and also this header to look like your application. And so obviously, if you know Yellowfin well, you'd probably still recognize it. But if you didn't know Yellowfin, you would assume that this was all just functionality provided by the application itself. This is actually then functions exactly the same way as standalone Yellowfin does, subject to certain restrictions, which you can define yourself through user permissions and so on. I could add new dashboards, I can add new reports. That ask a question feature here, it's presented as a button instead of just an option under the single plus. And so a few differences where they've chosen to take a different approach to styling. But if we just pop back to the application itself, other elements where they've chosen to bring through Yellowfin content, these are actually Yellowfin stories which have been embedded within the application. So they call it a management update, but it's actually a story which is written by somebody to provide updates to management. If I click on one, then what I'm seeing is a Yellowfin story here presented in a pop-up. Again, that's the application doing that, but access to the Yellowfin content is all available via REST APIs. So you call the REST API, get the content back, and then display it in your application. In this case, it's difficult to tell, but it's most probably in an iframe in a pop-up window. That's certainly one of the simpler ways to do it, but there are various options as to how you present the content. You can see this is a report that's been surfaced, most probably again in an iframe. We've got another feature of Yellowfin, which is called Signals, which is sort of heavyweight data analysis, looking for changes to patterns in your data. So it looks at things like changes in trend or spikes in the data, new and missing dimension values and so on. It can potentially give rise to signals, so help you to spot, if there was a customer who was spending same amount every month and all of a sudden they stopped spending, then a signal would pick up on that and tell you that actually we're missing that customer if you set the right tasks and so on. Tasks could be something from Yellowfin, but certainly there are tasks within Yellowfin, and that's available through the API again, so you could surface them. But what I can do is I can go back into the reports. So here we've got a whole bunch of reports that have been created. Again, just making use of the fact that full Yellowfin functionality is available to your users if you want to make it so. So they've gone and provided their own analysis on the core data. But you can apply all of the same permissions to that data. It's fine-grained permissions. You can have row-level security applied based on the user and the group membership. And on the dashboards, we've got some quite nice examples of how it's actually a spark line, a way of representing the data. The sales are fairly constant on that, so it doesn't change very much. Area charts, we've got GIS mapping and so on, and all these. This is just standard Yellowfin content at that point. We're viewing the dashboard, but it's all embedded. So as I mentioned, you've got REST APIs. We also have SOAP APIs. And those are largely, you can use one or the other or a combination if you prefer. We also have JavaScript APIs to allow you to really customize the way that Yellowfin works at the UI level. In that case, you can pull back items of Yellowfin content and they're returned as DOM objects, which you can build into your web pages and manipulate them using your own JavaScript. So really very flexible. Obviously, there's quite a lot more work involved in building that. You have to be a proficient JavaScript coder to be able to do it, but it just gives you a flavor of the flexibility that's available if you want to go down that route. I suppose I should also mention single sign-on. All of this depends on single sign-on from your application through to Yellowfin. And again, there are APIs, various APIs, which can allow you to do that. The simplest is probably to use Java Web Tokens. You call an API, passing in a token to create a session using an administrator credentials, and you can create a session then for whatever user you want to create one for. You're getting single sign-on that way. But there are also options if you're not doing embedding. If you want single sign-on to the native product, then we support OAuth and SAML, LDAP. Off the top of my head, those are the main ones that we've come across. But we've seen customers use all kinds of authentication mechanisms via bridges, which they build themselves, layering on top of one of those mechanisms. So very flexible and very strong support for embedding and customization. Any more questions come up there, Simon?
Not at the moment, but I'm just sat there musing over the kind of conversations you can have around the flexibility of the tool. You've got enough to start off straight out of the box, but then if you've got developers, if you've got ideas about, often we've spoken to customers who want the data to be displayed in a different place for a different business purpose, to be able to trigger other business processes when things are going right or wrong, and you don't get that functionality with a lot of other tools. And you know, with the flexibility of Yellowfin, you can design it into that business process. You can augment and make things easier for people rather than having them bounce around to different dashboards. You can streamline it into the business process, and I think that is a very exciting feature that not many, I can't think of any other tool that works in the same way as Yellowfin does.
Yeah, I think that's very true, both in terms of the more sort of heavyweight integration that we showed here with the Big Fish demo that we're looking at, but also more simply, if you want to use action buttons within reports, we have the facility to create what we call an action button, which you can then use to launch a URL to take you through to another site, passing in the data content of the cell as a parameter. So if you're looking at a product in a line in a report and you want to create a promotion based on that product, you can just define a URL which embeds the ID of that product and take you straight into your application to do that. Similarly, you can pop up, you can use that to pop up name and address details for a customer you're looking at, or any of those sorts of things. So yes, very sophisticated facilities for navigating from one report to another, and indeed to external applications.
Absolutely.
I was getting a very quick point. I know we've got to wrap up. I was just going to say we also have write back as well, just talking about those flows. But yes,
that's where my brain was going when Rob was explaining it. I mean, that's what you want. You want the data to flow back into the right place, and and if not, you want a write back functionality, which again creates more options and it helps. I mean, that's what we're all here to do, is to help the business process of the business team use the data more effectively, and you've got a tool like Yellowfin who's going to be able to achieve that. Certainly. Thank you very much, Jean and Rob, for the demonstration and the walkthrough. But I'd like to thank everyone for being here today, and again to Rob and to Jean. It's been a great, insightful half an hour. Slash.
Yes,
slash
3 hour.
But very useful. I hope you all agree.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Nice to meet you. Thanks, Simon. Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.